So over our Brexit talks, we've talked a lot about what is going to happen to the UK, its economy, but one of the things we haven't talked a lot about on this channel is what happens to all the UK citizens who are currently living and working in Europe and who, through freedom of movement, have been able to go live and work there. Not only that, but you have people who have mixed marriages, and under freedom of movement, they haven't had to register what country they belong to. I've had someone contact me through Facebook who has said that they have a Spanish partner and they live in the UK and they don't know what's going to happen. They just don't know. And not only that, what happens to their children? Are they English or are they Spanish? They are left. They told me they were left in complete, bemusement to their situation. They've no idea what they're going to do. And this blog comes from the Huffington Post, and it's, I'm a UK citizen living in Europe. I have absolutely no idea whether I'll be able to work in 100 days' time. The Prime Minister's mission to deliver Brexit and bring an end to freedom of movement once and for all. She claims that the injunction to end freedom of movement is an instruction from the people in the 2016 referendum, despite many Leave voters believing some in the Leave campaigns that the UK would remain in the single market, which requires it. And I said this countless times before. Lots of Leave voters wanted to leave the EU politically but remain in the single market and the customs union. This was sold by a lot of people who campaigned for Leave. Which requires it, and that little would actually change. In an example of epic astroturfing by an immigration-obsessed Prime Minister. Worse yet, she has doubled down on her determination to deliver this, even if it means a catastrophic no-deal Brexit for the UK. To even contemplate a no-deal, particularly when we know that thanks to the European Court judgments that the Article 50 can be revoked, that it would be a conscientious policy choice to do so. Its act of steering irresponsibility to the people of the UK, which it is. A lot of what people on the Brexiteers have been calling for is not even what the UK public really wants, especially people who voted to leave but still wanted to remain in the single market and customs union. And remember, that was an option that was sold to people. There are few whom the extent of this irresponsibility is more stark than the 1.2 million UK citizens living in the EU 27, and our friends and more than 3 million EU 27 million in the UK. Remember that Brexiteers have consistently accused those worried about citizens' rights post-Brexit of hysterical scaremongering, and Boris Johnson, Michael Gove and others in the Leave campaigns flat out lied that the Vienna Convention would guarantee both groups' current rights. The Prime Minister has said that our lives will continue to be just as before. While the withdrawal agreement falls very far short of meeting the promises made, it does offer some protection. No deal, however, does not. EU citizens have little comfort then, but to barely credible guarantees of a Prime Minister who created, quote-unquote, the most hostile environment, and those whose stated aim is to make sure that as few of their compatriots as possible come to the UK in the future. The Commission issued a condemnation yesterday confirming that a no deal would make UK citizens in the EU third country nationals overnight. It will be up to the individual EU member states to legislate and put systems in place to ensure that there are legal residents on March the 30th, 2019. No one with the permanent residence should legally have to leave, but this relies on member states getting this right in a startlingly short period of time. And it's not just that. You heard there, individual governments, and particularly in Spain, one of the things that you don't hear very often, that the right wing, especially in Spain, hates the pensioners that come to Spain to live out their lives, because, as they say, it's a drain on their health system, their economy, all this type of stuff. I guarantee you, all those Spanish pensioners that at one time campaigned for the right to have a MP, yeah, they did, look it up, that was an actual thing, will now be forced to come home if the Spanish government gets their way, and it's more than likely they will go that way. They have 15 weeks. In Belgium, where things tend to take time, this seems a particularly tall order. Even if the legislation can be put in place in time, despite the Belgian government just having registered nearly 600 communities would have to adopt new procedures. I'm self-employed and I have no idea whether I will be able to work on the 30th of March if the system is not in place. I'll be on the wrong register, and the business registration and VAT numbers linked to my ID card and registration number may be no longer valid. Maybe they will. I'm an EU expert and I still have no idea. I'm one of the lucky ones. My wife is an EU citizen, so I'm sure I will be able to stay. Many of my friends are musicians, self-employed with precarious incomes or disorganised or incomplete documentation. Others are single or two-brick couples who have no idea what their future holds. They worry daily about whether it's just their job at risk, will their qualifications be recognised, or whether they will be able to stay in their homes at all. For some, the situation is beyond impossible. One friend in the UK who is a full-time carer, along with her Dutch husband, has no idea whether he or her Dutch children would have to move to the Netherlands, or whether, if they did, she would be allowed to go with them. Another already resident in the Netherlands, where she cares for a sick husband, knows not if she will knows that she will have to go back to the UK to care for her elderly parents. He will not meet the salary requirements to go with her. No one should have to make or even fear having to make those choices. It is inhuman. It's a travesty. It's making people sick. And remember, the hostile environment in the UK is not just for foreigners. One UK citizen I know in the UK is undergoing cancer treatment, but would not be eligible for free NHS care for 3 months if he was forced to return to the UK. Cancer does not wait for permits and Home Office designations. Any UK citizen returning from living abroad, even if forced to, cannot claim any benefits for at least that long either, and possibly longer until they can prove that they are a habitual resident and have severed links with their previous home. The message is clear. We are not wanted. Our government does not care for its fundamental duty to protect its own citizens. Most UK citizens in the EU didn't even get a vote. Our lives are just political collateral damage to the PM's quest against foreigners, unworthy of consideration due to our disloyal in exchanging our treaty rights. In exercising our treaty rights. Our own government, instead of offering us the necessary assistance and protection, is deliberately pursuing a policy that would hang its own citizens out to dry. I mean, what more can you say other than that? Brexit isn't just going to affect us financially and economically. There's you know, as it said here, as it said in the beginning, there's 1.2 million UK citizens living in the European Union. What happens to them? And remember, they didn't get a vote. And by the way, that is more than enough to tip the scales, to make it a very clear 50-50 vote at that point. So here we are once again. You know, once we get into the new year, it's less than 100 days. You know, the clock's ticking, and still the vote is meant to be happening on, I think it's the 11th of January. I think it's been scheduled for. There's still no evidence that it's going to pass. So we've still got a case of where it could be just kicked down further down the road. You know, Theresa May went to Europe to try and get concessions. She didn't get any because the European Union had already said, we're not renegotiating it. But there we are.